Good evening, everyone. This is a meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee for Capital Expenditures. Today is Thursday, February 19th, 2026. Welcome back. To recap where we were, last week we went through an overview of the total citywide capital needs inventory. And these next few weeks, what we were going to be doing is going into more detail for the specific categories. And what I'm doing is going to be sharing. If you look on your screen, just to recall, we have all the categories labeled A through H. And this evening, what we plan to do is go through categories A and B with streets and bridges. And so with us this evening, we have a number of special guests making presentations. We have, in addition to Rich Bradley, who did a stellar job last week presenting the inventory overall, we have a couple additional people from his shop, John Kohler, Programming and Planning Executive with Board of Public Service, as well as Kevin Trapp, the Chief Engineer. And then we also have Scott Ogilvie, who is the City Planning Executive with our Planning and Urban Design Agency. So I don't know who, I imagine, Scott, if you're the one who would be taking over the presentation. Unless Rich, you wanted to have any other introductory comments, I'll give it over to you guys.
Just a quick good evening, everybody. And just a reminder, saw a couple comments through social media last week and just around that the capital needs list that we're looking at, this $225 or so million of critical needs, is a wish list. And so, as Paul mentioned, there's about 40 some odd $1 million that we're trying to pair up what everyone thinks are the best projects to go with that. Nothing in here has been predetermined. So, again, it's all up for consideration. All needs to be considered for funding. Just keep that in the back of your mind. And with that, I'll turn it over to Scott to make the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Rich. Let me just get my screen shared. Everybody see this? I see some heads nodding.
I don't. Okay.
There we go. There we go. We're good.
Okay. Well, my name is Scott Ogilvie. I work for the city's Planning and Urban Design Agency. Also doing this presentation with me, as Paul mentioned, are John Kohler from the Board of Public Service, Kevin Trapp from the Board of Public Service, and I believe David Newberger, who is Commissioner from the Office of the Disabled, is also on the call. And I think he might have some words to share as well. So even before you guys get to this stage of the Capital Committee and the Citizens Advisory Committee to the Capital Committee, there's a step that comes before that now for streets and transportation projects. And that is the Complete Streets Advisory Committee, which by ordinance makes recommendations to this body, to the Capital Committee. So what I'm going to be going over first is the recommendations that committee made to the Capital Committee, transmitted to Paul Payne in January. And then Kevin is going to talk more in detail on some bridge projects, which are also transportation projects, but they're not directly in the Complete Streets Committee recommendations. So first, this slide is just an overview of the projects that are recommended. There's 7 projects that have funding attached to them that are recommended. So these are 3 projects that have previously been awarded grants through East West Gateway. And I'm going to go, there's a slide for each of these projects. So I'm just going to go over them quickly here. So it's the River to Pear Boulevard reconstruction, Christie Greenway extension, Skinker McCausland traffic signal replacement project. There's 2 new projects which currently have pending East West Gateway grant applications where the city of St. Louis has applied for these projects, and East West Gateway will make their determinations on projects across the region later this year. That is Lindell multimodal improvements and South Kings Highway traffic signal replacements. And then within the recommendations, there are 2 locally funded projects for bike facility improvements and for continued ADA transition plan funding. In addition to those 7 projects, there are 3 other projects that we highlighted on the map that don't have funding requests for this fiscal year, but they also played a role in our decision-making on which projects to recommend. And so those are the Cass Avenue Phase 2 reconstruction, building on Cass Avenue Phase 1. I might talk a little bit about these here because I don't have slides, but that's the reconstruction of Cass Avenue from Jefferson to Grand. Phase 1, which is from Tucker to Jefferson, is already funded. These projects are a partnership between the city and St. Louis Development Corporation, who's providing some of the funding in the design phase. So that project is on our radar. Then there's the Brickline Greenway, Market Street, a segment east of 20th Street. This is a GRG-led project, but they have a grant application pending to East West Gateway to extend the Brickline Greenway to the east into downtown. I'm sure many folks have seen the recently completed project on Market Street from Jefferson or from sort of the MLS Stadium out to Compton. And then the Old Stable Bridge project, which we're making a note of because that will likely have a fiscal year 28 funding request associated with it.
Hey, Scott, could I just interrupt quickly?
Yeah, thank you.
There was a question about the actual documents. All of the documents that we are going over, both in last week's meeting and this week's meeting, are posted on the website. So if you look at the agenda for this meeting, below that will be Scott's presentation that he's doing right now. And if you need materials from last week, you just go to last week's meeting and you'll have all those materials posted as well.
Could we ask questions along the way here?
Yeah, Scott, do you have natural stopping points?
Yeah, we can. So John and I think can take questions on every slide, on every project. That might be the best way to do it. People have questions on each project. So I think we'll describe the project and the phase it's in. And then we can pause for committee questions on each project if that works for you, Paul.
Yeah, that's fine. Either put it in the chat, which I can see, although now I can't see like if you raise your hand, I can't see that now. Scott, you've got that on screen. So, but anyway, we'll get to it one way or the other.
Okay. So here's just a table of the same projects I just listed with the fiscal year 27 funding request and the total project cost. And then so each one of these is a slide, so we'll get into more detail as we go forward. So the first project, this is one of the projects that already has a grant, an STP grant through East West Gateway. So the committee is seeking funding for some of the local match in the construction phase. So a reminder of what this project is. This is a pretty significant reconstruction project for River to Pear Boulevard from Lansdowne to Gravois. This section of roadway has really deficient overall roadway characteristics. It's a really old piece of roadway, poor pavement, extremely narrow travel lanes, lack of curbs, lack of guardrail in many places adjacent to the River to Pear drainage channel. So this project would do a lot of reconstruction for just improved quality of roadway and a much safer roadway. There'd actually be a little bit of widening associated with this project, which is not very typical of city projects right now, but because this street is overly narrow for the amount of traffic it carries, there'd be construction of a center median to divide those two directions of traffic to prevent crossover type crashes. There'll be multimodal improvements, including much better bus stops in the corridor and access to those bus stops on the east side of the roadway, which are extremely dangerous to access right now, or in some cases almost non-existent. Guardrail installation in some locations, as I mentioned. Likely pretty significant changes at Chippewa, which are in design right now. And this is a really significant project, close to $20 million overall in project cost. John, is there anything you want to add on this one?
No, you hit on a lot of the major
safety elements and functionality elements that scored very highly during East-West Gateway's review process. And it's also been deemed regionally significant across the 5 Missouri counties, which enabled us to acquire more than the minimum or maximum 15% of the region's funding. So that's a significant point that it did acquire nearly $16 million in federal funding.
Is
John, do you
that the
wanna-
difference? So this, if I understand what you're saying, the city's contribution is 1.2 million and 1.8 million.
So it's a 20% local match. If the total project costs, it's rounded to 20 million. 4 million, 20% of the 20, 4 million is the city's local match contribution. And
Okay.
we've spread that over multiple years. We're in design now. And what you see in fiscal 27, 1.5 million of the 4 is tied to partially constructing the local match. And then the following year in 28, we're looking for the balance of 1.8 million. When you add those two figures together, that's 3.3. And then we have 700,000 approximately already appropriated in design that we're in the middle of right now.
Yeah, thanks.
Paul, do we want to ask if people want to raise their hands if they have other?
Yeah, I was
Questions?
I can't see the hands because you've got the screen, but we also have chat as well. So if you want to send us something in chat, you could do that as well.
Let's see. 300 people. Public hearing, it's just been a very long.
Paul, can you see my hand when I raise it?
Yeah, I just saw yours. Yeah.
Okay, so if anyone uses their raise hand icon, you should be able to see it.
Okay. Okay, great.
Or they can.
I see Dennis has his hand raised.
Hey Scott, what year is the construction in this one?
John, do you have that handy?
I think for these actions.
I think John's looking for it. I think this is roughly 2029, but
If you would start, I will provide notes to the ABC. That's partially. And they will provide some of the file.
So Scott, are you saying that the city have already obligated 4 million, or is this the ask to complete this project?
the city has a commitment to fund roughly 4 million locally, but it is not yet funded. So this fiscal year 27 ask is for what we're calling part of the construction funding or part of the local match funding that's required to advance the project.
Dennis, on the construction anticipated start, and we are on track right now. It's scheduled to start in spring of 2028.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other raised hands. So the second recommendation is the local match funding for an extension of the Christie Greenway. This is another project where the city has already been awarded a grant through East West Gateway, in this instance, a TAP grant, which is a Transportation Alternative Program grant. This funding program is primarily limited to bike and pedestrian enhancements or improvements. This project would extend the Christie Greenway from where it ends right now at Holly Hills Boulevard through Christie Park, along Christie Boulevard to Kings Highway, where some intersection improvements have actually already been constructed that would link up with this greenway, as part of the Kings Highway ARPA corridor project. So this project would build a sidewalk level greenway on the east side of the roadway, about 1.2 miles. And the total project cost is 3.1 million. And so the city share for construction is 500,000. John?
And we are under design right now, probably about 25% complete. Anticipate construction start in the fall of 28.
Thanks. Dennis?
Is this GRG led or is the city the lead agency on the extension?
This is city led. But GRG is not a funding partner in this project, but it connects into GRG's, greenway system.
Thank you.
It also ties into the recently constructed new signalized intersection at Kings Highway and Christie and Neosho. It'll tie into bike lanes that were just constructed on Kings Highway as well.
Any other comments here or questions here? Okay, moving on to the next project. Again, this is a third project that's already been awarded some funding through East West Gateway, in this case, a CMAQ grant, which stands for Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality. So this project is primarily a traffic signal replacement project along Skinker and McCausland on the south end from Arsenal, on the north end where Skinker kind of turns into Keeneland and exits the city. It's approximately 20 traffic signals that would be replaced through this project. There will also be ADA and curb ramp improvements wherever the project is doing signal work. North of Del Mar, there are some additional sidewalk and pedestrian safety improvements that will be part of the project. Where the roadway gets really wide, it goes under the Metrolink bridge, and there's currently some really just deficient or non-existent sidewalk conditions. So the project will make some improvements there too. This is partial construction funding, 1 million. Total project cost is around 12.2 million. John?
Just a general comment about these major signal improvement projects. We as a city have been very successful in building and upgrading our major arterials in the city. This particular project is Traffic Management Enhancement Phase 9. And Scott will talk a little bit about Phase 10 as well on South Kings Highway. And these projects, because they improve the air quality along major arterials, reduce those emissions, they're looked at very favorably on East West Gateway. And we get not only cleaner air, but a better timed corridor to minimize stopping at signals and improve how traffic flows along those arterials. This project should start in the fall of 28.
And whenever we have these signal projects, if they are not already the intersections fully brought up to ADA compliance, including pedestrian signals, audible push buttons that are accessible, and other features. Any questions here?
How far north of Del Mar will the sidewalks improvements go?
So that part is not fully designed right now, but the main focus area is where the roadway goes underneath that Metrolink bridge, that Metrolink overpass. That section, you've got, I think you have 6 traffic lanes, but you have very poor sidewalk conditions. There's sort of a sidewalk that goes underneath that bridge, but it's not really usable or accessible. It's really narrow. So this project will be looking at kind of redesigning the roadway underneath the bridge to make sure there's sufficient space for an adequate width sidewalk and then connections on each end, on each side of the bridge. That's the main sidewalk focus of this project.
So everything been designed up to, but not the sidewalks improvement north of Delmore, but the rest of it been in design, already in the design phase?
The project actually will stop at Page. So all the signals along Skinker, ML, or Skinker, and McCausland will be replaced. There's 20 of them, starting at Page, going all the way south. And at all the curb ramps at all those signalized intersections will be brought up to grade. It's the connections between the signals that will be addressed, primarily where the railroad underpass is underneath Delmar. How far north we go, whether we get all the way to Page or stop near that area, we haven't yet determined. But it'll include the whole section under the underpass to provide better connectivity.
There was a question in the chat about, is that Etzel?
Yes, I think the way this map is depicting it, the red line stops at Etzel there, but John, thank you for clarifying. The project actually goes a little further north to Page.
I would just pull out a detail in the application. It actually, the sidewalk, as we've shown on the plan, would stop at Horton, which is the first road under the underpass, coming up to the north under the underpass. So essentially it goes from new sidewalk from Rosedale to Horton, which encompasses the underpass. And medians and other lane reconfiguration to provide better access for all modes. And another element, the Hodemont Avenue has a unorthodox skewed tying in to Skinker. We're planning to take that out and have a better connection of Hodemont into Skinker that will make it more intuitive for vehicles and safer for pedestrians.
Thanks, John. Any other questions here? Okay. The next project, Lindell Multimodal Improvements. This is a project where the city has submitted a grant application to East West Gateway, again, for the Transportation Alternative Program. This project, if awarded, and it's certainly likely to be awarded, will construct a new two-way cycle track on the south side of Lindell between Kings Highway and Vandevenner. It would include a road diet. This is a section of roadway that has 5 narrow lanes. So it would change to 3 adequately sized lanes in addition to that cycle track. It would also construct bus boarding islands on the south cycle track side of the street to facilitate access to bus stops. Would make ADA improvements in the corridor. There'd be new pavement markings, and then separately, the street would also be repaved, but that cost is outside of the project grant cost, so separate from that. The ask here is for $100,000, which is just the first part of the project to cover the engineering phase of the project. This project partially originated through interest from the alderperson, traffic study, and public meeting that was held, kind of 2/3 of the way through 2025, which helped determine residents' preferred configuration for the cycle track.
It's also important to note that east of Vandeventer on Lindell, the city repaved that stretch and built one traffic lane in each direction and bike lanes that would dovetail well into the proposed cycle track shown in red here.
Questions here?
Good.
Okay, moving to the next project. Again, this is an application the city has pending with East West Gateway. This is another traffic signal replacement project on South Kings Highway. This goes from McCree to Gravois, will encompass approximately 17 signals. This will be primarily just a traffic signal project itself, as this corridor was resurfaced last year and had a lot of other roadway safety improvements just constructed. So the paving is new. It's had a lot of ADA work done in conjunction with that paving. So this project primarily focused just on replacing old signals and the underground interconnection between those signals, so they are all tied together. And so this is the first phase, the design and engineering phase of the project, which would be $300,000. Not hearing any questions or seeing any hands. We'll move to the two locally funded recommendations from the Complete Streets Committee. So this first one is enhancements to existing bike facilities. So this is one I'll talk through a little bit. So the background on this is that for about 20 years, the city through various programs, including East West Gateway grant programs, locally funded programs, ward capital programs, has been incrementally building out the on-street bike network. A lot of that bike network consists of conventional bike lanes, signage, pavement markings. In more recent years, the city has also been designing protected bike facilities using vertical elements like flex posts, like these zebras that are depicted. But some of that infrastructure has been damaged through various reasons. The two top pictures are Union, which was holding up really well until the tornado last year, where it sustained a lot of damage in the cleanup. And then the pictures on the bottom are images of bike facilities that are just the paint is fading away. And to keep those facilities functioning properly, if we could install durable thermoplastic pavement markings, that would go a long way to really emphasizing, where those bike facilities are. So this funding would allow a local funding source to kind of go through our network across the entire city and kind of fix the things that are really showing a lot of wear and tear, and would allow us to kind of make spot fixes with inventory of these vertical elements as they may get damaged in the future. This is a funding request that is necessary, I think, on a periodic basis, but may not be required every single year. More at maybe a few year interval where the city has some funding, can do the updates that need to happen to keep the system functioning and looking like it should. And then maybe in a few years, there would be another request. John, do you want to add anything to this one?
No, that's good background. Scott, I see Dennis has his hand.
Hey, Scott or John, is the work performed by city forces, or is this just then eventually contracted out for a contractor to do it?
I think it will likely be both. So I think how this is how I would anticipate it works is that for things like thermoplastic bike lane markings, which that's like a sheet of plastic, has the marking that is essentially melted into the top layer of the asphalt. We would likely have a contractor do that work, as contractors can do it, have that capacity. And internally, we don't have very much capacity to do that. So I think we would, if and when the funding is available, we would do an assessment of which corridors were most in need of that retrofit. And we would hire a contractor to do that. Some of the vertical elements, we could do some of that in-house if we have those things in stock. We don't have a big stock of flex posts and zebras right now. So I think it'll be a mix of in-house and contracted work to to return the system maybe to how it was in the first years when these projects were built.
Yeah, I would encourage just urgency and if it's more feasible to get it done quickly with a contractor help to do so. I know staffing is constantly going to be an issue at the city. So if it's quicker to get it done through contracted help, I would encourage that. Thank you.
Scott, I have a question for you. Have we done a study, has the city done a study that determines the amount of usage of these lanes over the last 5, 10 years? And as a subset of that, what stretches of it are most utilized?
Not a systematic study, so we're looking at the whole network. That they're in the Greenway system. So I want to say this is specific to the on-street bike network system. In the Greenway system, there are counters in some locations, so you have user counts. We will sometimes get user counts when we're doing specific corridor designs, so we'll have some information there. I would also say though that, and I think Union is actually a really good example here, that having the bike facility on Union is really a component of the full roadway design. So Union was a really overly wide street where we used to have 5 lanes instead of 3 lanes, and that caused a lot of reckless driving, a lot of crashes. And the corridor is functioning much more safely with the current design with the protected bike lanes. I think the other thing I would say is, last year we completed the city's transportation and mobility plan, which is the first time in a very long time that the city's been able to do a citywide transportation plan. And we were able to survey a large number of residents across the city and just kind of ask them general questions about the types of transportation amenities they wanted and the things they cared about most. Safety was very much on the top of that list. People, for reasons that are not surprising, I'm sure to any of us, are very focused on a safer transportation network in the city. But expanding bikeway connections is also something that a lot of people expressed a preference for.
I had a similar question or follow-up to that question. I'm totally in favor of bikes and bike myself, but the ones like on the lower left or lower right rather, I just don't see those being used very often. I mean, people not the unprotected bike lanes, you might as well just be in the street. Whereas at least in my experience, the ones that are protected are used a lot.
Yeah, I think what you're expressing is what we hear from residents very frequently, that there's a real preference for like a trail or a greenway in comparison to an on-street facility. The kind of flip side of that coin is that building a new trail or a new greenway is, of course, much more expensive than an on-street facility. So there's going to be a more limited number of places where we can build those really kind of premium, bikeways. The on-street network, which is what this funding would be allocated to, is really about connecting to that greenway system. As we build out this bigger greenway system that touches more parts of the city, more neighborhoods, the on-street connections, I think, are there to help people get into that greenway system.
But the city in a number of places in the, look at the lower right image again, it flipped the bike and the parking lane, which makes it much safer for the biker. So as
Right,
long as it
right.
comes out the doors.
Yeah, right. So yeah, and so protected designs are something that we're now doing, and I think you'll see on more projects going forward. I'll point to one that we are building right now on Fodemont Avenue, from Del Mar up to Glen Giles Park. That was a a locally designed project funded with Ward Capital, two-way protected cycle track with the zebras. Um, that's the type of thing, a decade ago, I think we would have been more reluctant to do, but you're going to see more and more protected facilities as time goes on. But when we do that, we also kind of need more capacity then to maintain them, because there is more maintenance associated with a protected bike facility compared to a conventional bike lane that is shown there on the bottom right.
Bill, I think it's important to note some of the major projects that you're going to see built in the next 2 to 3 years that involve parking protected or infrastructure protected bike lanes. And I'm going to just rattle off a few because that's the comments we've heard from the public, and that's the type of projects we would like to build to encourage higher bicycle ridership. One you might have seen recently that was just open is the 7th Street two-way cycle track, protected from Shoto to Ballpark Village. We're in the middle of construction of the Tucker cycle track that's parking protected and by a raised median, and that's from Shoto to Washington. We're building 20th Street, a raised cycle track from Market up to St. Louis Avenue right now. When we build the Compton Bridge, we've got a separate pedestrian and two-way cycle track on that bridge. 4th Street downtown from Shoto to Convention Plaza. We are getting ready to bid a two-way protected bike track on that project as well. And MoDOT, our agency that governs the show or Manchester Shoto, they are building protected bike lanes because we're investing so much on the corridors that touch the Shoto Manchester. So that's our mission, is to build safer and separated facilities as we move forward.
Thanks, it's encouraging.
Yeah, thank you, John. I did want to, I did see a question in the chat pertaining to the previous slide, and I don't know if that had been answered, but just to make sure we've covered everything. The question is, what kind of improvement should we expect with traffic signal upgrades? Can you clarify what is currently wrong with the current traffic signals?
Sure. So the two projects that are on this list that are primarily, but not exclusively, traffic signal projects. The first thing is that the full traffic signal itself is replaced. Generally, that's the controller, which maybe you don't notice, but it's in a metal box off to the side of the intersection. It's the signalization, the mast arms. It's also the pedestrian infrastructure at those intersections. So the pedestrian signalization, the push buttons to actuate the pedestrian signals, audible push buttons, which are fully accessible to all users. And then on these projects, there's also frequently an underground component, which you don't see, which is a fiber optic connection between the signals so that they can operate in conjunction with each other, and in some cases allow control remotely in certain traffic situations as well. These CMAC projects also allow the capacity to have things like cameras on the signals that can be monitored from, so that traffic operations can be monitored remotely. And then not on this project, South Kings Highway, but on the Skinker project, that one is primarily signals, but there's also more sidewalk work and lane reconfiguration work we'll be doing, which we talked through a little bit north of Del Mar, kind of underneath the Metrolink bridge there.
Thanks, Scott.
Essentially, the equipment in the traffic controller is outdated. It's like using an old computer compared to getting a more modern, faster, efficient computer that you can potentially monitor at the real-time traffic center and then modify operations with that more current equipment.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And actually, I did have a question on the bike facility enhancements. First of all, thank you for describing what the facility. Every time I see the word facilities, I think we're talking about buildings, but technically, you're working about on the infrastructure and the markings and lanes and such. With the $1 million cost, is there a rule of thumb about what that buys? Is there a mileage per mile of the zebra markings or whatever it is that you're proposing to do? What's the rule of thumb here about how much you can bang out of the buck can you get for a certain amount of dollars?
It's a good question. I don't know if I can assign a mileage to it. We've got, so this is a little bit from memory, but right now we've got about 100 miles. If this figure is wrong, it's wrong because I'm going from memory, but we've got about 100 miles of on-street bike lanes in the city. And then we've got even more mileage of what we call just signed sort of share road routes, which isn't a bike lane. It's just a sign that says share the road and that share marking. It doesn't all need to be refreshed, but probably 50% of it does need to be refreshed. So, and that's limited really just to replacing those pavement markings, like the bike lane symbol, maybe some signage. And then we've got a lot less mileage in terms of, protected facilities, just really like a few miles of fully protected, parking protected on-street facilities. And the only place that really needs a lot of work there is Union. The other ones are newer and are in good shape. So we based that figure on some prior capital programs. So we have some East West Gateway grant funded programs in previous years that did the design and striping and installation of a lot of bike lane facilities. So we don't have to really do a lot of design with this. It's really more going back to those previous designs and just refreshing the pavement markings to make sure that they're visible and people understand that the bike lanes are there.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
I see Bill and Dennis have their hands up.
Kind of related to the question about just overall mileage and whatnot. I know last fall Archie was introduced, the bike lane sweeper. Has that been utilized this year? And then is there a plan to also strap a snow plow to it during snowstorms?
So it probably hasn't been used this year yet because of the weather, but I'm sure as we fully get into spring, it will be out there. That equipment is not really designed to have a snowplow on it. Archie is a very fancy vacuum cleaner, essentially. I think the decision to plow any facilities is more of an operational decision, but a better vehicle to plow a bike lane or a path, which we do in some cases, particularly in Forest Park, is like a gator with a plow on it. Archie's probably not the equipment, but it's more than an equipment question there. It's really a capacity question to be able to plow some of these facilities, which is a little outside of what I can speak to today.
Did you say there was another raised hand?
I think it might have come down, unless,
Okay.
Bill, did you have it?
You answered my question earlier.
Okay, great. So moving to next. ADA transition plan funding. This would be an annual allocation. I think this would be the fourth year that there would be an allocation towards the ADA transition plan, which was officially finished in 2024, but which we really started using even before that. So the transition plan speaks to making all the public services, facilities, and transportation facilities the city has accessible over time. The plan itself identifies some key improvements to make and highlights important facilities we need to upgrade in city buildings and city programs, but also sidewalks and right-of-way. I think this program, since we started a few years ago, has been really a huge success and has allowed things like parks, sidewalks, restrooms, entrances to buildings, all types of things that are needed to make sure everybody can fully access all public services and buildings, to make those things accessible. The funding is generally being used where there is not another large scale project to do kind of spot improvements to make things accessible. And the recommendation this year is $3 million into that program. Another slide here where I'll highlight some of the things that have been accomplished with this in recent years, including improved access to senior centers all over the city. So those are sidewalks, walkways to those centers and building entrances, Gamble Rec Center improvements, doors at the Soulard Market, which are now accessible, access to Carondelet Park Lake, restrooms on multiple floors of City Hall have been renovated to be accessible. The municipal court and City Hall sidewalk work has begun to make kind of the whole perimeter around City Hall accessible. There's bus stop accessibility improvements that are currently in design. There's been accessible parking spaces built at Fairground Park and Wilmore Park. There's currently sidewalk enhancements on Gravois and St. Louis Avenue, which were some of the highest priority locations in the ADA transition plan, where we don't have other projects. And there's lots more things, sort of too many to list on one slide. But I think this has been really a real bright spot in recent years on making St. Louis more accessible to all residents. And I think David is on the call. If David wants to expand on anything I said, I think he's welcome to.
I think you did a very good summary of it, Scott. It's important to always, in my mind, to point out that what we do is looking for areas that are not accessible and are not likely to be a part of some other project, so that we're trying to make the whole city accessible and let the other projects that comply with ADA standards as they're constructed. One of the other features of all of this is that we get a fair amount of federal money for streets in one way or another, but there is very little federal money for sidewalk improvements. So we are doing a lot of sidewalk improvements, a lot of places. And we also are very interested in the public telling us where there are problems. Because, for example, we have somebody who has lived in an area where used a wheelchair and to get to a bus stop, he had to use the street. There was no other way to do it. And so we can give that a higher priority. And so I'm one of these people who says the more complaints we get, the better, rather than the other way around. So everybody is welcome to make suggestions.
Yeah, and I think one really important distinction I want to make is accessibility is a part of any transportation project or most building improvements that the city would make. But this funding can generally be used to do work, as David said, outside of locations where we have major projects. So when we're talking about those roadway reconstruction, those signal projects, accessibility is built into the design of those projects. But the images I have up here, like the top images, we might not have a major project in those locations, but the ADA transition plan funding, this is just one image, one example, could be available then to go make those kind of spot sidewalk or curb ramp or other building improvements that would enhance accessibility.
There are two hands up.
We do have a question in the chat. Are you able to assess approximately how much of the city still needs new ADA installations where we are more maintaining the system rather than new installs?
Yeah, so the first part of the question we don't have a full assessment of every street or sidewalk in the city. The ADA transition plan did a partial assessment with the funding that was available. And the locations that were assessed were informed by pedestrian generators and income level and senior citizens who live in those areas. And that, so kind of those factors. We are also internally building out a better GIS layer of sidewalks and curb ramps, which maybe is getting a little technical, but I think that is going to really help us keep track of what we're doing and identify locations where we need to do work. We are not unique in not having a full assessment of every, square foot of the city. That is something that, many cities don't have that level of detail. So I think there will always be work to do. This is work that I think will never end, but the goal is to be, maximizing our funding to be improving accessibility kind of year over year, and to be applying that funding to areas where it will, make the most impact.
Do you explain the lower right picture? What are we seeing there?
I just grabbed an action shot of sidewalk work there. So that's that was a different project, but it was just, showing that particular image is showing a new cut through a median on Kings Highway, so that the crosswalk that's going across Kings Highway, the walker or wheelchair user doesn't have to go around that median anymore. They can go straight through the median in a protected space and then, cross the other side of the street as well. Let's see, Dennis has a question.
Yeah, Scott, as you mentioned, I think over the last couple of years, there's definitely been a noticeable effort in especially curb cuts. One thing that I do want to bring in attention, specifically in downtown, there's a lot of crosswalks where utility work has been done, and there's 3, 4, 5 different pavements. So if we can kind of focus on, as the curb ramps are being rebuilt, as they are specifically on Washington Avenue, I think every one of those has been redone in the last year. The actual crosswalk itself, if we can, when somebody does apply for a utility permit, to have them return it back to the, a usable state, because I can give you examples of 9th, 10th Street across Washington Avenue, where there's 7, 8 different cuts from utility work. So to at least for this crosswalk portion, to return that back to a single pavement type, and that it's accessible for a wheelchair or a stroller, which right now, if you cross by Courtyard, I think it's on 9th or 10th, there's probably 7 different cuts of pavement just in the crosswalk from utility work, which I know there's a lot of old infrastructure and utility emergencies are going to happen. But I think that we should set an expectation that when they are done with their work, that the entire crosswalk should be in a single type of pavement and just a very smooth pavement, instead of 7, 8 different type of pavements that we're seeing now.
Yeah, I hear you for sure. It's a bigger challenge downtown where there's a lot more density of underground utilities. I think the good news on Washington Avenue is that all that curb ramp work you saw is the beginning of a little bit bigger project that's going to build some additional traffic calming and resurface Washington and have new pavement markings there. That's likely coming later in 26 or possibly in 27. So a lot of the things specifically you're noting, I think will be resolved before too long. But yeah, it's improving the utility restoration work is something that I know is on a lot of people's radars.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And yeah, Dennis, that one in particular, I've noticed that comes up every year when we have this discussion about the utility cuts. So it's obviously an important issue.
Okay. This slide is just a reminder that we as a city have a lot of projects all over the city, north, central, and south. We're in a period where we are really doing a lot of work. So I just, we have 7 projects that we mentioned in the capital committee request, but I want to emphasize that they're far from the only projects. We have projects big and small in every corner of the city, including the ARPA corridor work, other notable projects, but this is just a short list. This is not all of them that are currently under construction, including Tucker Cycle Track, full reconstruction of North Grand for the Brickline Greenway through GRG, Market Street, which is just wrapping up, Tower Grove Connector, Manchester Shoto, which MoDOT is moving into kind of the real construction phase of now. 20th Street Greenway or cycle track is fully under construction. So a lot of exciting projects, in addition to the ones we mentioned. And then we are out of my portion of the presentation, and we are to Kevin Trapp. So hopefully Kevin is still here. He's going to talk about bridges.
Lisa had a question, Scott.
Oh,
Great.
missed
Hey
it.
there. Quick question about the Manchester Shoto project. We live and work along Manchester, in the Shoto area. And MoDOT said to us when we asked about bike and some of the protective measures, because this area is so dangerous, people love to drag race down it and do some things. They said that they can do certain elements of a road project, but that the city had to handle the vertical elements. Is that just the zebras and the things like that? Or I wasn't exactly clear when he was clarifying that, what we do as a city versus what MoDOT can do for our roads to make them more pedestrian and biker friendly.
Sure. So MoDOT maintains several corridors in the city where we as a city really own the right of way, and through a maintenance agreement with MoDOT, they primarily maintain curb to curb. I would say that through a lot of dialogue between MoDOT and the city, we worked through most of that on the Manchester Shoto project. So part of that project is MoDOT is building protected bike lanes. So that roadway cross section is going to change later this year. And they will have the vertical elements. And that'll be really a first for MoDOT. They haven't really built that type of project anywhere else in the state. But if you squint, you can kind of see on this map that that we as a city have a lot of other bikeway infrastructure that is crossing or intersecting with that section of Shoto. So they maybe got out of their comfort zone a little bit to build the protected bike lanes. So those are coming this year.
Just a quick add-on to that, as that project was developing in the public engagement and in the design, MoDOT in the middle of that process decided to fund several more millions of dollars for safety improvements on Manchester. And they have, as part of that funding commitment, now are including raised concrete medians to protect the bicyclists on the outer edges of the roadway. So your conversation might have occurred before that additional financial commitment.
Yeah, we want to give them credit for expanding the project and really investing more into safety infrastructure in the city for sure. And we coordinate very closely with them, maybe
Thank
more
you.
closely than ever before.
Thank you for clarifying that.
I don't want to speak too far, but a number of the major owners along there have been meeting periodically to consider a TIF or a community CDI SID or something like that to add on top of what MoDOT is doing and what the city's doing. So stay tuned on that. But it's clear that Shoto is going to be completely different 10 years from now. So the more we can do collectively to make it that way, the better. So.
Yeah, that's great. And MoDOT's project does not preclude additional changes or investments for sure. So thank you.
Have there been any traffic upgrade designs submitted to Eastway Gateway as relates to North St. Louis?
Yeah, so there's quite a few projects. So I want to say that this presentation is really about the Complete Streets recommendations to the Capital Committee, but since I have this slide up, I think we can maybe briefly touch on a few other projects just for context. So I think, and it's hard to show these all on one map that you can see, but some of the most impactful work right now is happening on North Grand, which is being completely reconstructed and will be dramatically safer, all new infrastructure from Natural Bridge down to Cass, and that project with the greenway will continue on Spring. MoDOT is also pretty far along, almost complete with design of a safety project on the full length of Page. So that will be constructed probably in 2027. The city's north-south corridor ARPA projects. So Union was repaved and had some safety improvements last year. North Kings Highway was repaved and had some safety improvements in 2024 and 2025. All of Goodfellow is getting going this year, so that'll be fully resurfaced with some safety improvements. There's also a traffic signal project on Goodfellow. There is also the rest of Grand, so the section of Grand that's outside of the Brickline Greenway, that will be resurfaced and repaved and get some safety improvements later this year in 2026. On North Grand, sort of north of Fairground Park, you can already see the curb ramp work has started for that project. MoDOT had two recent projects, Riverview and Hall Street, which were resurfacing projects. In particular, Hall Street had some safety improvements that will hopefully reduce some of the reckless driving that's happened there. Not shown on this map, but the city last year applied for a grant from the federal government to do safety work and build like a mixed-use path on West Florissant, which is a roadway that has a really poor safety record right now. Unfortunately, that grant was not awarded, even though it was a pretty compelling grant application that the city put together. But that street is certainly on the radar for, the city will be looking at other means of funding a project like that in the future. So that's touches on a few, maybe not every project, but some of the things that are funded now and also the city is thinking about in the future.
Okay, thank you, Scott. I think Paul mentioned our last discussion that the housing sales tax goes to help the capital improvement budget. If that's so, I would like to encourage that when these projects are being bid, these projects are being implemented, that the minority participation and the workforce development ordinance of 69427 be fully enforced, because minorities and people that work in St. Louis spend money here, and it helps our budget. And I just want to ensure that, or make the statement that when these projects are being awarded, that those ordinances be enforced. Thank you.
So Scott, I'll make a comment on that. So Mr. Aronzel, these are federally funded projects and we are required to follow all the federal checks and balances. Everything that you're talking about is all included in there, duly noted, and we have no choice but to do that.
But I don't see it on the street, Mr. Bradley. I don't see it working on the streets. I don't see, the workforce development ordinance that talks about projects over $1 million where city residents should be working on these projects. I don't see it on the streets. And that's the reason why I mentioned it now, because I just don't see it on the streets.
So on federally funded projects, which is different than city funded projects, there's a different program that goes with that. What I would refer you to do is talk with Otis Williams over at SLDC. Otis administers the program for M&W BE programs as well as workforce participation. They're actually working on a new ordinance while we speak, waiting for that new ordinance to come out, but I can assure you it's on all of our projects.
Well, I thank everybody for going through these recommendations with me, and I think we can jump to Kevin Trapp now to talk about bridges. Kevin?
Good evening, everyone. I won't take nearly as long as Scott, but I just want to introduce you to a few bridge needs we have in the city. The first two I'm going to talk about are actually design is essentially complete. We are going through our final approvals with the state to get permission to bid, but due to some unfortunate delays during design, construction costs have overrun what we have programmed. The first is Compton Bridge. This is going to be a complete reconstruction of Compton between Shoto and Spruce. So not just replacing the bridge, we're also going to completely replace the streets and sidewalk for that entire corridor. We're gonna have a 4-lane bridge, and on the east side, we're gonna widen it so that we have a wide multi-use bike ped facility. It will connect the bike lanes on Shoto up to bike lanes that MoDOT will be installing on Spruce as part of their upcoming I-64 project. And we are, our construction budget, we are about $3 million short. So that is what we're here to ask for today. The shortfall is due to, it's always due to right away. We had, because we're widening the bridge, we had to purchase right away from the state, from multiple railroad companies, and from a few different businesses. It took longer than expected. Delays with the supply chain that we've all hit on in the past few years drastically increased the cost of steel and MSE walls, which are two of the main components of this construction, which is why our budget did not hit. I have several questions, so we can start with Bill.
First of all, in the drawing, what is the group, the blue rectangle?
The blue is indicating where the existing bridge currently is. The red shows the full length of what we are reconstructing, and the blue is the footprint of the bridge.
Okay. And can you share the design as it is?
And what do you mean?
What you're planning on building? The photograph you have there is existing, right? So.
Oh yeah. So I mean, Compton, it'll be a 4-lane road with a wide multi-use path on the east side. It'll be the path will be physically separated with a tall concrete jersey barrier, so it's completely protected. But it will just look like a street.
Okay.
Yeah, the plans on our BPS website for the
not yet. We don't put the plans out before we bid.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Oh,
actually, I do have another question. I assume this is tying into all the changes of 64 that have been proposed by MoDOT.
So our design started well before MoDOT's did, but they have our plans. We are coordinating the intersection of Spruce and Compton with their work because they are going to be doing work on Spruce as part of their off-ramp reconfigurations. So the two projects are coordinated.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm probably not going to pronounce this. I apologize, but Keva Razani.
Thank you. I appreciate the attempt. It's Kave.
I apologize.
That's quite all right. No one ever gets it right the first time. I was wondering, to piggyback off of Bill's last question, if there were any updates. I know there's been a kerfuffle about this Highway 40 exit or not here on Compton. Can you speak to that? I see based on the drawing that your proposed improvements look to kind of terminate right at or before perhaps that proposed removal of the exit. If you have any information about that, would love to hear about it.
So our project is stopping on the south side of the Spruce intersection, which is the southern limits of the MoDOT bridge over 64. They're not doing anything with their bridge. So I don't know your question about the off ramps, but it doesn't affect what our project is doing.
Yeah, so MoDOT is, it's maybe hard to describe without an image here. But MoDOT is assessing, I'll say reassessing access to westbound I-64 from Compton at Market, essentially. There's a existing access point that was changed as part of their redesign for their section from Grant to Compton, but based on community feedback, they're reassessing that. And that's kind of an internal process they're doing right now to figure out if something is feasible or not feasible and the cost of it. So I think they've taken in that input and they're trying to figure out what to do with it right now, but it has certainly not been discarded, the input they've received.
Thank you, Scott. And then just a follow-up, I drive this bridge multiple times a day. Can you address some of the issues with the continued cracks in the road, if the new design kind of cures for, I believe there are 9 new speed bumps or attempts to cover up potholes and stuff like that? It seems like they cover seams in the existing bridge.
It's the joints. This is currently this is a very long bridge, a lot longer than it needs to be because the over half of the bridge used to have railroad tracks that are long gone. So we're first of all we're going to shorten our bridge significantly. We're going to build it up with walls and pavement, so there won't be all those joints in the new bridge. What's currently happening is that the joints have failed, so we put asphalt in just so that we're not popping tires. The asphalt falls through after a few months. We throw a little bit more. It's purely a temporary measure for tire protection until we can get this bridge closed and demoed. The new bridge will be significantly shorter. It's not going to have the joints that the current bridge has, and it will not have this problem.
Thank you.
Dennis?
Yeah, just what's the expected closure? Is it a 2-year project?
Yes, essentially.
Okay, thank you.
A little over 2, actually.
So I just want to add a comment about the expansion joints and the patches out there. We know it's inconvenient to the traveling public, but it's the only way that we can keep Compton open as long as possible before we close it for construction. If we, the other answer would be is we don't do the asphalt patches out there and we just close the bridge now, but we realize it is a main artery for people when Grand is backed up, when SLU has a basketball game and things like that. So we're doing our very best to keep that bridge open as long as we can until we absolutely have to close it for construction.
Thank you. It's certainly better than what it's covering up, but so I do appreciate that. And one last question. I'm so very sorry. What is the proposed sort of diversion or detour plan during that closure?
So our detour route is going to be over on Jefferson, and our job will somewhat overlap with MoDOT's project, and they are going to be detouring on Grand.
Thank you.
We do have a question in the chat. How will you slow folks down on Compton? I don't like the speed humps, but they do keep people from speeding.
So I would say the answer to that is this. So in our world, there's 3 E's. There's engineering, there's enforcement, and in this case here, the E for enforcement is going to be what the police are going to come out here and have to maintain that. We will put lower speed limits on it, but obviously we don't want to put expansion joints on a bridge. If we don't, expansion joints, speed humps on a bridge. So it's going to have to be us working with the police in conjunction with, the engineering and everything that goes into it. Traffic calming measures we put on it, which are just narrowing the lanes down a bit. So, Scott, you have any further thoughts on that?
I had to unmute myself. I don't have a ton of thoughts on speeding. I think traffic calming is a little trickier on a bridge. I will say that the bridge overall will be dramatically safer because you'll have a protected bike and pedestrian path on the one side that'll be functional compared to what is there now, which is, completely non-functional. And there'll be much better protection against roadway departure for drivers, which is potentially a safety issue as well, with, concrete barrier on the sides of the bridge. So I think the bridge itself will be safer. Hopefully, drivers moderate their speed and, drive appropriately on it.
Well, I guess the reason I asked that question, I'll jump in. This is Lisa, is we live just a few blocks from there, and coming down off that bridge, people try to make the light, so they build up speed to get across Compton. And that used to be, and still continues on from time to time, to be a place where there were consistently accidents at Compton and Shodo because people were trying to get through, get down that bridge and across before the lights turned. And so we have seen. We hear fewer accidents with the speed bumps being there, even though they are a pain and nobody loves them.
Well, it's good to actually hear that, that it does slow the people down quite a bit. The other part of that is I mentioned the 3 E's. I didn't mention the educational aspect, and hopefully as part of all the traffic calming that we're doing across the city and all the things that we try to do every day to save lives, we can educate the public to understand what the result is from doing all these things. So, I think it's a threefold approach, but at the end of the day, nobody wants the enforcement arm to be there when people break the law, but sometimes that just has to be what it has to be.
So not seeing
yeah,
any more.
Kevin, I did. How much shorter did you say the bridge was going to be compared to what it is today?
Actually, if you look at that little map down at the bottom where the existing bridge is sort of boxed out in blue, our new bridge is only going to cover those two dotted lines, which represent the extent of crossing over the train tracks. So our new bridge will stop just past the Metrolink, and it'll be over less than half the length of the existing bridge.
I believe the new bridge is about 450 linear feet. The old one's like around 1,300.
Okay, wow, that's
it's a significant reduction, which is great because that will also reduce long-term maintenance costs.
Right. Thanks.
Moving on to Southwest and Columbia, which are actually our second and third oldest bridges in the city. Columbia, we had to shut down a few years ago because it was severely deteriorated and semis were consistently driving over it despite it being load rated for about 10 tons. We had to make that difficult decision, but it really wasn't that difficult because that bridge couldn't take it. So this is Southwest and Columbia, just a little over half a mile west of Kings Highway. The two bridges are right next to each other. They are not tall enough to get over the height of modern trains. Actually, this bridge has been struck twice by trains, so we do need to raise it. And unfortunately, we can't raise them where they're at. So the solution we came to is that we're going to construct one single bridge, basically coming through the middle of it. So Southwest will have a little bit of an S curve. It'll come down. New bridge cuts through the middle, and then it ties right back into Southwest. We got hit with a big environmental delay due to a building on the National Registry that we need to tear down. So it took 2 years to get approval from the United States Department of Interior to tear that building down, which caused our construction budget to miss, and we're $1 million short on our budget. This one is also nearly complete with design. We look to be bidding this and Compton this spring. And we just need a little bit more money for construction.
What's the building that came down or it's coming down?
It's just east of this bridge. It looks like a small airplane hangar. It's called a Quonset hut. It had an auto body in it for a long time, and then recently it was a cycle fitness place. Can
you use your cursor and point it on the plan here?
It's not really visible. It's right here. But the neighborhood to the east was put on the National Registry because it was a neighborhood built single family homes after World War II when all the soldiers were coming home. This building got looped in with that neighborhood. It has nothing to do with why the neighborhood was historic, but they threw it on, and so it got listed in the registry.
I drive that road every day, and I'm just trying to visualize it.
It's got like an upside down U shaped, just a long metal building.
I'll look for it next time. So your blue in your drawings, the blue rectangles.
Those are the two existing bridges that are coming down.
And you're putting a new one kind of more or less in the middle?
Yes, pretty much right in that gap in the middle. So the way construction will work is we're going to tear down Compton first. We'll keep Southwest open. We'll build the new bridge just south of the existing Southwest. And then once we have new traffic on the new bridge, we'll tear out the old bridge.
Sounds like a good solution.
Some thinking. Our first thought was bury Favaz's under about 10 feet of wall. So it took a while, but we came up with the right place. Anyone have questions on Southwest and Columbia? I should have mentioned both of those projects. Sorry, what?
When, you said it, but I forgot. When are you doing that?
We are getting our final approvals from the state on both of these projects. Basically now Compton is probably a little faster. I'm hoping to bid that within weeks. Southwest is probably going to be more springtime, later spring, May. But they are
Your sequence,
essentially ready.
You'll build a new bridge before you tear the other two down?
Oh, I'm sorry. In construction, we will tear down Columbia's bridge. It's already closed to traffic. That one will come down. The new bridge will be built sort of half in the gap and a little bit over where existing Columbia is. And then once we have traffic on the new bridge, we will tear down the old Southwest bridge.
Thanks.
Moving on to Old Stable then. This is a small bridge in Forest Park. It's right outside the lower Muni parking lot. There's another, it's probably about our fifth oldest bridge. It was built in 1922. We actually have, we have applied for federal funding on this in February. We will know from East West Gateway, I don't know, the summertime, right, John? If with this one gets awarded.
We'll have a good indication in early May when East West Gateway staff makes recommendations to the Transportation Planning Committee. Early.
There's nothing special about this bridge. We're just going to pretty much remove it and replace it as is. We're not making any improvements here other than our bridge is structurally deficient. So it's 100 and whatever years, 5 years old. So it's just time. If we get awarded the application, the grant application, our design is already funded. So we will be looking for $660,000 for the local match of construction, which we wouldn't need until fiscal year 28.
Is Forest Park forever involved with this or coordinating with you?
We will coordinate heavily with them. We will go through the Forest Park Advisory Board for their approval. Yes.
So during the application process, Bill, Leslie and her staff provided a letter of support, which is included in the application, as well as Greg Hayes, the Parks Director's letter of support is in the application as well. So they're very happy to see a new bridge here. We're also slightly widening sidewalks on each side of the roadway compared to the existing, and another 2 feet wider.
Kaveh?
Yeah, so I'm a little confused. Is this looking to be appropriated from this year's budget, or is this just sort of an advance notice that in a year or two this will be coming back around?
John?
So
do you know how to
sure,
answer that?
we do have some funding for the design for local match. So we're not asking this fiscal year for the local match to support design. Assuming that the project is recommended for funding in May, East West Gateway, who doles out the federal money, they stagger the phases of the project. 1 year it's design, the next year it's right-of-way acquisition, and then the following year or the following 2 years, it's construction. Because East West Gateway establishes funding availability for construction, in this case, for this bridge, it would be fiscal year 28. And we don't need any money in this current 27 because we already have the design funded, but when funding for construction is available in 28, we'll be coming back to the committee to ask for 660,000 to support the construction phase.
Didn't want to skip over an active bridge project in the bridge category.
Yeah, this is more for informational at this point, not a need for 27.
Thank you.
Seeing no more questions, I just have one more, and it is an unusual one. The city actually owns a bridge to nowhere over in Illinois. What happened was when the city built the MacArthur Bridge, we had a vehicle deck on top and the trains below. In the 80s, we gave ownership of that bridge to Terminal Railroad, except for the vehicular approach to the bridge over in Illinois, which in my top right image there, it's sort of painted in light gray. We took out about 900 feet of it that crosses over Illinois Route 3, but we have in the bottom right, it's highlighted in red. That's an existing bridge that still is there. It's about 1,700 feet. It crosses 2 roads and 2 railroad tracks, active railroad tracks. It's barricaded at the entrance, but people that want to get around the barricades will find a way around the barricades. It is just a big liability to the city. We are estimating that it's about $3 million to demolish. It serves no purpose and it will never serve a purpose. Terminal will never repurpose this into any type of green space on their bridge or anything like that. It's been severed from the bridge. It exists only to be a liability at this point. Yes.
So I saw a board bill this week to turn this over to East St. Louis. Is that, and I'm full disclosure, I didn't read the whole board bill, but is that with the condition that the city will demolish it and then turn it over to East Illinois?
No,
or East St. Louis?
we are trying to work with East St. Louis. There's talks that they may take over ownership of this one. It is not a done deal. They want the area for development, but obviously the bridge is an issue. If they're willing to take it, then this $3 million is not going to be needed. But if they don't take it, this is a huge liability for the city that needs to be addressed. So we're sort of attacking it from 2 different angles here.
But I think that $3 million would be better spent in North St. Louis correcting those sidewalks and lights that were destroyed by the tornado. I think we can hold off on that bridge.
So if this all works out, Mr. Ironsell, and the city of East St. Louis accepts it, which Mayor Powell came to Mayor Jones in the previous administration and requested this for developmental purposes, our hope would be is it would cost the city of East St. Louis $1 to buy this bridge from us, and we would remove a $3 million demolition program from our capital program, and then we could allocate $3 million to something else. That's our hope.
Well, just think good thoughts that it happens for you.
So let me interject and ask this question. Is there some way to maybe meet the city of St. Louis, East St. Louis in the middle, meaning, they have an interest in developing the property. We want to divest ourselves of the liability. It's $3 million project. Are they in a position to potentially fund part of the demolition?
So if this works the way that we hope it does, they will fund all the demolition and it would be turned over to them for $1, and they would be responsible to, demo the bridge. They would take over the right of way and everything. It would not cost city of St. Louis anything.
Understood. But I'm saying in the context of they don't want to buy it for $1 and it's still ours, is the next step in the process to try to find some middle ground where, we, half and half or whatever that looks like.
Yes, logically, I think that would be the next step we would do. Obviously,
Okay.
I think we want to get rid of a liability for us. They want to use the land. So, we would take all the steps we could, because right now, if we do nothing, it'll cost us $3 million to take it down. So absolutely.
Understood. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other questions, but that's the end of my part of this. I appreciate y'all's time.
Yeah, no, thank you, Kevin. Well done. We are now just past the top of the hour. So, and I've been, I know we went over last week, so I did want to be respectful of everyone's time this evening. I would like to thank everyone's presenters. Does anyone ever have any other questions outstanding? Dennis, I see your hand up. Is that from before, or is that?
No, it's now, I understand, having staffing issues, and then there's stuff that comes up during project development that's out of the city's control. But as John and Scott have heard me talk about this before, I think it'd still be useful if we can have a project by project schedule on the BPS website so that the residents can kind of see. And I think people will be more understanding, like if we present a schedule on the city's website and then something happens that delays the project, and we can include a reason there. But I would encourage us to have a schedule on project by project basis so that residents can check in and see when things are expected. And I think people will be much more understanding when delays do happen if they have an idea beforehand that, something is going to start at this date and at that date. So I would just encourage to have a project by project schedule, not necessarily like a MoDOT STIP where it's laid out 5 years in advance, but I think at minimum we should have some type of rough schedule for projects so where residents can access. And then, if there is a good reason for the delay, that can be just annotated when the schedule is updated. But yeah, that's basically it. Thank you.
Dennis, your point is well taken, and I wanted to mention and point out, and with your encouragement over the past few years, the Board of Public Service has been very proactive in posting project updates on our BPS website. We have done a much better job at including data on each project that we manage here at BPS. I do hear you. Can we do better with keeping current updates? Absolutely. And we continue to strive to, as scheduled changes, to make those updates on a project by project basis. But I do encourage anyone that wants to find out information on our managed projects, check out our website. We've got a fairly robust project by project database there. Thanks, Dennis.
Yeah, I'll add on to that too. We recently hired a GIS specialist who is now creating our project web pages. What you see today is drastically better than what you saw a year ago, and it will continue to improve. It's just she's one woman, and this is only a fraction of her job, so it's building slowly, but it is getting much better and informative to the public.
Okay, thank you again, guys. Anything else? Not seeing any others. Thank you again for your participation this evening. Next Thursday, on the 26th, we will be going into discussions about parks, as well as the fire department. Those are the next two categories on the inventory. So, and we'll, again, I see one hand raised. Again, before I forget, Kayla, I'll mention this. Again, if you're interested in seeing any materials that have been discussed, either at this week's meeting or last week's meeting, I encourage you to go to the website. All those materials are posted. Kayla, I saw your hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to just clarify, just so I'm aware. I know I love the discussion. I love the back and forth and the ability to answer questions and kind of throwing out our immediate response. But overall, just for formality reasons, will we have kind of an opportunity to present our overall feelings in each category, or are you expecting to hear that feedback right now as these presenters are here to hear them?
No, very good question. What I do anticipate, and this is what we've done in the past, is that once we hear from everybody, what I'll be doing is an outreach to each of you in a survey format, is saying, okay, here's what's been presented. How would you rate these programs from a priority standpoint? What do you think would be the most important ones? Because obviously we can't fund everything. So which ones do you think have a higher priority than others? And also give you an opportunity, if there's something that we haven't covered, anything you might want to suggest as well.
Right.
And so we take that and rate that among the responders who participate, and sort of that gives us an idea about what you all are thinking based on what you've heard through these number of weeks.
Perfect. And that's exactly what I was hoping you would say, but just with some of the feedback that's kind of been thrown out, I'm like, I hope I'm not missing my opportunity to be able to give that. So I've been taking notes and holding it all up, and I will absolutely be able to give the honest feedback once we can hear everybody's presentation. So thank you for that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Kayla. Bill, I see your hand up.
One more question. Maybe it's an obvious question, but last week you talked about I mean, it's just actually a little scary, the number of critical things that are not going to get funded this year or next year, the year after. Some of those, when they get done, and it's going to cost a whole lot more to do it in the future than it is now. I assume that you're making that calculation as you put these lists together, trying to do the things now that are going to be most costly if you put them off.
Yeah, that's a good point. Particularly those, and conversely, both the expense of the project, but also the revenue side of the project. Whereas if you have matching funds, or if you have the Fed saying, "Hey, we've got a project, we're going to 4-to-1," obviously those are the kind of things you want to maximize and try to get that big bang for the buck today versus putting it off. So I think those are some calculations that we do take into account when we fund them. Rich, I see your hand up, so why don't you can.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And we do look at all that, try to cover the most critical things that are going to grow in cost. But keep something in mind. This is one pot of money to go towards these critical needs. There are other items that come up throughout the year. There are general obligation bonds. There are word capital funds. There could be possibly some money like Rams money that the Board of Alders do an infrastructure bill with. And so that's why it's critical that we meet with you all, and critical that you fill out the survey and give us your opinion, because not only this funding source, but as we go forward and other monies come available, we look at all that to keep applying it until we just don't have any money anymore.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, again, thank you very much. It was very, very. Oh, Dennis, I see your hand.
Sorry, just one quick question. On confidence level of spending the ARPA money on roadway projects by end of the year?
Is that for me?
Yes.
So I actually have a presentation in the morning to the mayor at 9 a.m. about that exactly. Just to give you just a little snapshot, since you asked the question, BPS had $131,285,923.47 in ARPA monies. To date, we have spent $94,998,354.02, leaving us $36,287,569.45 to spend by the end of this coming fiscal year. There are a couple of major projects that we need to get done. You're asking specifically about roadways. So we need to pave Grand Avenue. We need to pave Jefferson. And we're going to be working on Goodfellow and a series of other projects. Soon as we get weather here, and I'm talking, I can't have it go from 70 today and 35 tomorrow. Yes, we are going to pave. And I'm going to tell you, we will spend the money that we have in these programs. We will get this done.
I would hope that any of the money that CDA cannot spend gets to you guys to get more done if you can.
So I'm going to say about this, that decision is not really up to me. If the mayor and the administration decide that's what they want to do with it, the Board of Aldermen will get it done. Otherwise, they're the decision makers. We're just the doers.
One question, Paul, Mr. Payne, is there a breakdown on your web page that shows how much federal money is being used in the project and how much city money is being used in the same project?
Are you talking on ARPA funding, or are you talking capital funding, or everything?
Any project, I think you mentioned, Richard, there are some of the projects receive federal funding.
So
is there any city money? Is there on Paul's in your budget? Does it shows how much federal money is in that project and how much city money is in that project?
Yeah, I believe that there is a website. Is it on your website, Paul, on the budget's website that reflects all that?
Our website would have just the locally approved budget of budget funds. Now, we did have, last week, we also circulated what was appropriated over the last 5 years. But that was all city funds. That didn't tell what the other match, other than the ARPA, which were also included in that presentation.
So Rich, when a project goes out for bid and the bid is awarded and they want to use and capital money is being used,
Yes,
do you know how much city money is being used in that particular project?
yes, we do.
Okay, so based upon that city money don't have nothing to do with federal regulations, correct?
So the city, if you're doing a federal project, it doesn't matter if there's $1 of federal money in it or $1 million. It doesn't matter how much city money's in it, we follow the federal rules. If there's $1 federal, we follow the federal rules.
Where can I find that law at?
And what exactly are you looking for? Like
The
a list?
regulation that said that you follow federal rules when even if there's $1 city money in it. Where can I find the regulation at?
Yep, so it's gonna be in the CFR regulations for our federal projects. John, obviously,
Sure.
we have all the CFR information for all the federal projects. East West Gateway can answer that question, but we have MoDOT as our MP, as our metropolitan organization we work through with East West Gateway. Any of those people would have that information as well as us.
So just to tack on to that, Rich, we as receivers of federal funding are required to enter into agreements with MoDOT. MoDOT is the state's administrator of the federal funding. We're sub-recipients, but for us to access the federal money, we have to agree to all the terms that are very clearly defined in those detailed MoDOT agreements that reference the federal regulations.
But if it's all city money, we follow the MW program. If there's any federal money in it, we follow the DBE program.
Okay. All right. Again, thank you for participation this evening. Thank you for our presenters. Next week, as I mentioned, will be the same time, 5:30. We'll be talking about parks and fire department, and we'll see you there. Night, everyone.